All right, so what I'm going to start with is the assumption that there is a OpenVSP model that has been created, and I can quickly start by showing the one that I'll be starting with. So let's OpenVSP. Okay, so a couple things, let me get this out of the way. A couple things to note when it comes to OpenVSP is, one of the things that is important is that, let me actually get these showing properly. So one of the things that's pretty important for OpenVSP is that you do have to actually create the individual control surfaces and things like that yourself. So you have to model them as individual components, which is not how this one is modeled. It appears I've opened the wrong model, but they do need to be individual components. So here's a better showing. Let me get this texture. So here you can see that all of the components are individual components. In Geometry Browser, you'll see that each animated piece that I would like to animate is a separate file. And so as a result, when you're actually exporting it, you do have to export each individual piece that you'd like to animate. So I have basically a fixed geometry, which is the fuselage, the wing, and like the tail structure. And then I individually export the propeller, each flaperon, elevator, and rudder. And then if you wanted to, you could also do the tire with its strut if you wanted to animate deflections. So that's something to keep in mind. But so after exporting that, you would effectively have now a bunch of STL files, and you should export as STL. And so the good thing about Blender, which will be—
So Anthony, a couple of things. Can you show that real quick, exporting?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I know how to do it, but.
Yeah, sure. So it'd be File, Export. And when you go to export, you want to select what you want to export. Okay. So you would highlight only the item that you'd like to export. And then at this point, you would go ahead and just do export as STL. I don't think that this really matters. But yeah, you would just export this. And let's just do test here. Okay. It looks to me, oh, I see what's happened. Yeah, so let me do this. So let me delete this. What you do is you only show what you want to export. So everything else would be a no-show. And so you would show the item that you want to export. And then you would export at that point. So let's do export, STL, okay. I'll overwrite this as test. And so now it's just going to export that item. So unfortunately, it is a little slow. You do have to go through and repeat this process, several times. So you would basically go to the item that you want to show or that you want to export. So in this case, let's say I wanted to do the wing. I want to get this out of the way. You would do show. And if you want to combine things like I did, you can actually, for example, if I were to now export this would be one object. Okay, so you can export one object at a time, or you can export bodies together. So in this case, let's say I wanted to do the show. Go. I'm missing the strut, so let me get the struts. And then maybe vertical tail and horizontal tail. Let's show those. So this is kind of how I did it in the model that I made. Is I didn't want to animate any of this. So I went ahead and exported this as a STL, and I just called it fixed components. So these were the components that I didn't care to animate. And so you can export these. as they are. So whatever is shown is going to be exported, and let's call this fixed. And what that would look like ultimately is you open it up in a viewer, you'll see that it's got just the fixed components, right? So you'll see that the rudder's missing, horizontal tail, and the flaperons, all that is missing, propeller's missing. Similarly, this was a test. You can see that this was only one flaperon, right? So that's how you can do the individual components.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. And then the other thing is that for the individual control surfaces, is that from that video that we looked at that one day, how you did that?
Yes, I did. So I basically, that video, yeah, it basically tells you everything that you need to know. So you make the wing as is. You add stations to the wing at these kind of points here. And in doing so, you can actually just chop the butt of the wing, right, the trailing edge. And so if you chop the trailing edge at a certain chord fraction, you can basically chop that, and then you can make a copy of the wing. And instead of chopping the tail, you chop the leading edge, and that will give you a control surface. So these are effectively wing parts as well. Let me see if I can grab a flaperon here. So this flaperon is, technically speaking, it is a wing. However, what I've done is I've actually chopped, I've trimmed the leading edge by 0.7. So it's a chord fraction of 0.3. So I just chopped 70% of the leading edge off. And what that does, it effectively gives you a control surface. And that video goes through it completely on how to do that.
Yeah. Do you have a link to that video? I'm pretty sure I know which one it is, but
yeah, I can. Would you like me to dig that up now, or do you want me to?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, yeah.
I'm just thinking, so that video can, if you wouldn't mind just going to it, so that way.
Yeah, sure.
When we're looking at this in 3 years, we know which one.
Yeah, I understand. Let me do. See, I think you sent me that, but let me look this up really quickly.
I think it's this one. Let me put it in the. I don't know. It's the first one that came out. Let me see. You would know from looking at it, but you probably looked at it a lot longer than I have. But it might be this one. I'm not sure. That was the first one that came up.
Okay, let me take a look. Hey, I see you sent something. Take a look.
Does it look similar to the one you had?
Yeah, this is it. So this is this section right here. This is where he actually, and I can kind of try to make this show up a little bit better. You can see that in this section, I'm just going to kind of gloss through it, but hopefully it's capturing the pop-up that's coming here. You can see where he's actually cutting the control surfaces out of the wing. Then he talks about how you can make the control surfaces that fit into those slots. So yes, this is the video.
Okay, excellent, thank you.
Yeah, and so this goes through everything. It also goes through how to fillet the trailing edge, fillet the leading edge, so that it's kind of that slotted design. So yeah, this was what I watched to do all the control surfaces. Okay. And he also has a couple helpful tips on meshing that helps just make it clearer when you're kind of going through it. But yeah. Yeah, this is it though.
Okay, excellent, thank you.
All right. Okay. Anything else that you'd like me to kind of discuss on the OpenVSP side?
Is there so let's see. With the prop, is there anything, do you export that as a separate component too?
Yes, you do. Okay. So the propeller is, it is a separate component, and it will get, not the disc. The disc is not needed, by the way. I didn't know that. I just have it in here. But the propeller itself, yes, you export this separately, and you can, I mean, this propeller isn't, I don't know what it is. It's not the propeller that's on the plane, obviously. It's just a propeller for visual purposes. But yes.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Okay, so yeah, so you've got, okay, so we've got each individual moving component and as well as the non-moving components. And then, yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah, thanks for going through that.
Yeah, and they'll basically come out like this. This was a all-in-one, but these components here now should be all of your components.
Okay.
And you can name them, obviously whatever you want. But yeah, so that you would basically have your fixed components, and then you would have each individual component that you'd like to animate. And as I mentioned before, that can be a set. So for example, if you wanted to do a nose gear strut and a nose tire, you would show both of them as one component, and then you can animate them as like an arm. So that's kind of how Blender's going to see it.
Excellent.
Okay. All right. So then now assuming that we have gotten out of OpenVSP, now we're into Blender. So first thing with Blender, the latest version of Blender is 4.1. However, 4.1 does not support the X-Plane add-on. And there is an add-on that needs to be downloaded, and I will navigate to it. And so if you just Google Blender X-Plane, I misspelled that, add-on, you can see that there's something here called X-Plane to Blender. And this is an add-on that you can download that can be downloaded directly into Blender. And it basically allows you to export directly from Blender to X-Plane in the file format that they expect. So this is a necessary thing to do or to get as a last step. So after you've done everything and you want to get it into X-Plane, you actually need this add-on. And so when you download that add-on, I want to say in preferences here, you will have all of these add-ons, and it will show up here. Here we go. Yeah. So it'll show up as this sort of add-on here, X-Plane. So once you've downloaded it. So there is a how-to video, I believe, on how to actually install it, which is on this website here. But it's fairly straightforward. Install it, restart Blender, and it's kind of just there. And I'll talk more about kind of what that does when we get to it. So that would be first step. I was mentioning before, 4.1 is the latest. They don't support it right now. So the X-Plane add-on is not up to date enough to support 4.1.